Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. You have to excuse my little coughing from time to time, coming off having a worse cold last week, but some remnant of it still. Yeah. So I want to talk about some more aspects about the meditation practice. And the word meditation is basically an umbrella term that refers to a number of different types of practices that you find within Buddhism and yoga, and even some other religions might say this or that's a kind of meditation. But basically, the word meditation comes from the root M-E-D-I, which is basically means something like being in the middle. So that's the same root as medicine, and meditation, and also mediation. Now there could be some other ones too, but especially those three terms have a similar meaning. So medicine is the bridge, or stands in the middle between sickness and health. Right? So we take a medicine to try to overcome usually some physical or psychological problems back to normal. And a mediator sits in the middle between factitious parties, trying to resolve their conflicts. And meditation actually has a more specific meaning. It means being in the middle between past and future. And so anything that you focus your mind on that's in the present moment, let's say if you're focusing on your breathing, and let's say you're trying to just focus at the tip of the nose or on one small point, and feel that sensation, of course that's in the present moment. Or if you're chanting a mantra, that's occurring in the present moment, or you're visualizing a certain type of image, or anything that helps to keep your attention kind of in the present moment. That means without getting dragged off into the past with all of its worries, fears, anxieties, or greed, or the future of the same. Almost all mental activities are connected with the past and the future, which trigger off anxiety, worry, fear, and so on, connected with those objects. So anything that you focus your attention on, even counting sheep or whatever, that's limiting your attention span, the ability to stay focused more in the present moment, you could say is a type of meditation. But in our normal practice, we use the breathing and or the body itself as that present moment, because the body in the breathing body, I like to call it the breathing body rather than just the body or the breathing, but the breathing body, you can't really separate them. They're intimately connected. And it's, as I've mentioned before, it's that connection to the present moment. And why is that? Because this body is comprised totally of the nervous system. Any of you know physiology. Every single cell of the body and skin, internally and externally, is directly or indirectly connected back to the nervous system. And the nervous system is what carries the subtle electrical currents and also the life force energy that goes out to all the cells of the body to keep them alive. That's what keeps the body alive, is the current of energy that's passing through the cells of the body, as well as, of course, the oxygen that's being carried out, because the cells need oxygen to live. And that is pervading the whole nervous system, and that's how we're alive, actually, and that's what life is on the intimate or deeper level, and that's occurring in the present moment. That's why I so often refer to the body as the connection to the present moment, because it's the body where we're living all the time. This body is where we live. You might live in a house somewhere with an address, but that's just where you entertain friends, eat and sleep and do other things. But it's not really where you live. And so being connected and centered in the body is really getting in touch with the present moment vibrations that are going on in the body. And it's the natural connection. We were born with that. Again, as I mentioned almost in every talk, that that for 9 months in the womb, that's all we knew was this tremendous life force evolving and expanding in the mother's womb. All occurring in the present moment. It was all occurring with natural knowledge and wisdom, with the natural wisdom. It's only after being born, we're getting separated. The umbilical cord is cut, and we become separated from the life force, and we start learning language and getting focused in the external world, developing desires and aversions and external focus. We lost that natural connection to the body. And that's really the beginning of suffering, is losing that connection to the present moment, where the mind becomes totally focused in the external world and caught up in the attachment and aversion to the sensory objects of the world. And that state of present moment awareness is one also of total contentment and fulfillment, because it's kind of a sense of oneness. I mean, you're just feeling these vibrations of all over through the body, and it's a very organic type of feeling. And because it's in the present, it's perfectly at peace, because all problems are problems of the past and future. In every anxiety, fear, worry, attachment, aversion, I don't like this, I don't like that, is all connected to the past and future. But because we've lost that connection to the present moment, we don't know any other recourse. And the mind just gets naturally so easily sucked into thinking the external world is the end-all, be-all of life. And, even in this modern scientific age, with, even with an advanced state of knowledge of biology and anatomy, hardly any doctor ever tells you to, hey, feel the body, it's cool, Concentrate in the body, feel the vibrations and so on in the body. Anybody ever tell you that? Why? You think it's the natural. I mean, we have a memory of that from when we were in the womb, but now it's been suppressed all over, and we're totally focused on the external. So only when you get a bellyache or toothache or some other strong pain, then your mind is brought back to the body, but usually it's a painful feeling, and you wanted to kind of get away from it. So anyway, that's why actually in the practice of mindfulness, the Buddha chose the body as a starting point for the practice of mindfulness. Again, the reason why it's our easiest thing to feel. Even immediately just trying to sit down and focus your attention on something as fine and subtle as a touch of air touching the nostrils, that's very, very difficult for most people to feel, because it's not something easy to notice, and most people's minds are so, have a lot of hindrances and are easily distracted. It takes them a very, very long time, if ever, to develop that kind of concentration to, let's say, one-pointed concentration. And then even if they do, they cannot maintain it. So somebody might go on a retreat, a jhana retreat or something else for a week, and they might, for short periods of time, maybe a little longer, be able to experience 30 minutes or maybe even an hour of some, good concentration. But then it's sort of, they get out and it easily kind of dissipates, because they can't practice that form of close attention while standing or walking. Primarily it's difficult to do, or doing other kinds of things. So it's only suitable for certain periods of time. But then you have these other large gaps in the day when you're not being able to feel that. And that's why most people don't get the accumulation of the practice, or to develop that ability to stay focused there. But with the body, the physical body, the larger physical body, we have it with us all the time. And instead of one tiny little sensation of the breath to choose from, we've got millions or billions of other sensations that are equally good at feeling. And you're not only just one. An ability just to even feel many of those things going on at the same time is still a very concentrated state. So that's why it's not mine, but you see the Buddha's instructions itself, but people fail to remember that we use the breathing as an initial kind of focus, but then around the breathing itself is the larger body. And that's why whenever you sit down to meditate, rather than immediately trying to focus in on one, say you've come out of some, just drove in 3 hours, I gotta get in and meditate, so rush in the hall, sit down and immediately try to focus it. Most people are not going to have much success with that. Because people fail to understand the larger picture about what this body-mind is and all the different things that affect it, especially, as I've already mentioned, like posture and being able to sit in a comfortable posture. But at the beginning, even before focusing on the breathing, is to feel the posture, just mentally. If you come in, you sat down and just, okay, I'm sitting now. And you feel those different parts of the body, where the buttocks and feet touch underneath, and the hands touching the arms, the clothing touching the skin, and spending a minute or 2 or 3 just trying to keep the mind gradually. So you're starting from a very diffused field of awareness in the world out there. So when you come to sit down, you can't immediately go to one tiny little spot, but you come to, say, the larger body, and you gradually, bring it back in. So there's just the sitting. You mentally feel, the outline of the different parts of the body touching, adjusting the posture. So you're spending a few minutes doing that, and while you're doing that, the mind is being drawn inside and not so much distracted. And you let the mind move around a bit. Because it's sort of like training a dog, a wild dog. Let's say you got a wild, uncontrolled dog, and you want to train it to be more calm. So you tie or you let him in the yard without any leash, and then when somebody comes down the street, the dog runs after the person, starts barking, or runs after some other dog, or just runs around because it's got all this energy. And if you tie a rope around its neck, a short rope, to a tree, maybe only like a foot long, it'll struggle and struggle and struggle to get away from that and maybe damage the neck. So instead you give it a longer leash, like 15, 20 feet. So when he sees something, he'll run after that, but he reaches the end of the rope. And he might be barking, but he can't bite. And so he'll, after realizing he can't go further, he'll relax a little bit and be distracted, try to get to something else. He'll do that many times, but gradually he'll get tired of that and start to sit down. So at least he hasn't bitten anybody. Might have done a lot of barking, but it's not bitten anybody. That means karma. So like that, we give the mind a little bit of room to move around rather than immediately tying it down to one little point. Give it a little bit of leeway to move around within the body. But it's still basically right there in front of your mind. It's not like just letting it wander anywhere. It's not like that. And so you're moving the attention, and while you're doing that, checking the posture and moving up to the top of the head, and then just try to mentally feel that outline of the body in the mind's eye. Once you've felt the sensations, like where the buttocks press the seat, when the feet are crossed underneath, or the knees, you feel some sensation in the feet and toes, in the hands and fingers, because these areas have a lot of sensation, right? The buttocks, you got 100 pounds or more of body pressing down on the seat, so there's a lot of sensation there. And then you have the hands and fingers, all the blood has to reach the end of the fingers and thumbs and hits the end and has to turn around, so there's increased pulsation there and increased blood there, so you can feel that subtle sensation. And for the most part, it's a pleasant sensation. It's a subtle kind of just subtle little tingling or vibration or pulsation there in the hands and fingers, and then in the rest of the body. And even where the clothing touches the skin. A lot of people ignore that, never been taught to. But actually, those are very good contact points because they're subtle sensations. Just that subtle little, rub of the clothing on the arms or shoulders or anywhere else, on the chest, the rib cage, and just to feel those also are present moment vibrations. And by and large, they're either neutral or kind of pleasing sensations, or at least they're not too painful. So you can watch them without getting disturbed. But we hardly have been told to use those kind of more neutral or pleasurable body sensations to help keep the mind concentrated. And so by the time you work up to the head, and that could take anywhere from a minute or two to even 10 or 15 or more minutes. Because again, that is meditating. That means the mind is in the middle. It's in the present moment, feeling those. And because it's interesting. Oh, there's so many different little sensations. And so it helps to keep the mind more alert and awake. It kind of gives you something more interesting, just as opposed to just trying to keep it on that tiny little sense. Where is that? Struggling to bring your mind back all the time. So that's why this mindfulness of the body is a good alternative, and actually what I feel was the actual Buddha's teaching on it, why he started with mindfulness of the body. But the breathing is still there, of course. And so by the time you work the way up to the head and feeling that whole, and holding that kind of, you've awakened that vibration of the nervous system, what I call the inner internet. And so by deliberately focusing on parts of the body for 10, 15 seconds to feel something, then that you awaken, what they call awaken the vibration in those areas, or the sensitivity to that. And when you do it over and over again, and it gets easier to focus there, then it almost comes immediately when one sits down and just rests the mind there in the middle. This connection to the nervous system, in the present moment vibrations just automatically appear without so much struggling. Although the hindrances naturally still will come and go, but at least you've reached the first level of becoming grounded and centered in the middle. And then the breathing is there in the middle. So the breathing is there in the middle of the body, but the body is sitting around it. You have the outline of the sitting body, but in the middle of it, the predominant sensation is that of the expanding and contracting of the breathing. And especially if you do some deeper, slower breathing. I know almost all Buddhist meditations or teachers will tell you, don't control the breath, don't control the breath, don't control the breath, just let it be natural. Yeah, well, that may be all right if people knew how to breathe naturally, but most people don't know how to breathe naturally. And their breath has become distorted and become unnatural because of their habits, their neurotic habits and their lack of breathing exercise. Their breath has become very short and shallow, barely enough to keep the body alive. And so by deliberately doing deeper, slower breathing, you oxygenate the blood, which activates the cellular vibrations, and you have activates or exaggerates that feeling of kind of aliveness in the body. And so that using that as the primary way of keeping the mind alert and grounded in the present moment. And it also helps you to sit up straight, because in order to do some deep, slow breathing, you almost have to be sitting straight. And the moment you lose that and the body starts to go like this, then that cuts off, that contracts the rib cage, and your breath can no longer come in a fuller way, and the mind is lost in its thoughts normally. So these are all points to remember. So again, using the breathing body like that and making that what your primary focus of attention, rather than restricting your attention and trying to keep your attention on one tiny little point with the hopes of someday in the future gaining some concentration. Again, you might gain the concentration, but you're not going to be able to maintain it in the daily life. Even if you meditate 1 or 2 hours a day in your daily life, is on just some tiny sensation like the breathing, is not going to be enough to sort of counterweight or all the barrage of negative vibrations and other things in the daily life. So if we're going to spend a lot of time, meditating, we had to use it on something that's really going to be a more constant and available object for to help keep our mind grounded. So that's why the body itself, it's always with us all the time. And whether you're standing, walking, sitting, laying down, bending, stretching, doing anything, the body's always there, and all you have to do is pause and remember, what am I doing right now? The body's sitting like this, or sitting like that, or in any position. And it's not rocket science. And you can do it at any time, even in the midst of the supermarket or the airport. It doesn't have to be for long periods of time. For a space of even 30 seconds, or the space of a minute, just to pause and come to the body. That's what's so wonderful about it. Because, you don't have to, spend hours and hours sitting on the floor, with the fear of pains coming and so on. Although that's also a very important part, but the idea that it's not limited to that. And so even driving in your car, you can just be aware of, the sitting and the feeling of the body and sitting in the seat and other things. And when you pause at the red light, once you've trained yourself, you have 45 seconds before the light turns. You can, close your eyes or not. You can keep them open, but, and just do. But if you've practiced this, then all that feeling of the body will kind of instantly come into the mind. You can feel those subtle sensations, or just take a couple of deep, slow breaths while you're sitting there. Hold the breath in for 2 or 3 seconds. So beautiful, nice sensation. And when you're holding the breath in, it's impossible to think about anything, because it takes all of your effort to do that. And when you let the breath out, the whole body and mind relaxes, because it was there in the present moment for a few seconds, forgetting about the past and future. So that's where the relaxation comes. And then just to feel the vibration of the present moment. And again, we start with the body because, of course, we all know in the Buddha's teaching that the mind is ultimately the source of suffering. Our uncontrolled mind, being caught up in all of its phobias and fears and greeds and hatreds, and I don't like this and I don't like that, and that person did this to me, and all these grudges and or just the accumulation of restlessness and getting frustrated and irritated at such small little things that are happening throughout the day. All this adds up to sort of the jagged, fragged edges of the nervous system. And then we have to, learn how to relax in order to recenter ourselves. But when you practice this body-grounded awareness, because it's with you all the time, that you can release those pockets of tension and periods of stress by pausing, taking in a few deep breaths, coming back to the present moment, letting go of whatever the mind was occupied into. You don't have to wait until the evening meditation to do that. You can do that very quickly when you encounter any type of negative vibrations and so on. You can learn how to, at the next available moment, pause, take a few deep breaths, get in touch with the nervous system, relax, and so on. So this is all a skill, it's really the skill in for the meditator. It's the skill in meditation is learning how to use and employ these natural connections that we have that are available all the time, right within us, at any time and in any place, basically. And that's how your meditation can improve more dramatically or more quickly, because you're taking advantage of the the natural connection to the present moment, the whole body, not just one part of it, not just a little sensation of the breathing somewhere, or maybe some other limited sensation, but using the full weight of that to help you to stay grounded and centered. And also, there's a misconception about concentration. If you say concentration for the average person, they have the image of a cat concentrating on a mouse, in the corner, not being distracted. Or maybe in your regular meditation, concentrating on trying to feel that subtle chip of the breathing. And that is one form of concentration, but it's not the form of concentration that I think the Buddha was mentioning. Even one-pointedness, people get the idea one-pointedness means fixed on one point. But in the larger sense, the one-pointedness means the mind resting in the present moment. The present moment is the point, or let's say the pointless point. The mind resting in the present moment. So normally the mind is scattered around, getting distracted by that, getting distracted by so many things. But when you learn to center the attention in the middle of the body and just feeling that general sense of breathing in, breathing out. Breathing is in the middle, but around it, there's other things can be noticed as well. So that present moment is the one-pointedness. The mind has come to rest in the present moment. So that's a way that we can try to understand one-pointedness also, that at least has a little bit more meaning, and also something that's more achievable than thinking you have to keep your mind on one tiny little point, in which for most people they're not going to be able to do, not more than a very short period of time, and certainly not keep it there all the time. But the point of the body, with a little bit of practice, you can keep it there in your mind. It's certainly much easier than just trying to limit it to one sensation of the breathing. So, but again, being centered and grounded in the body is only the first stage. And then, according to the Satipatthana Sutra, then you have access to the feelings, which means the sensations in the body, the various sensations of the nervous system. So every time something comes into the nervous system, it's like insects flying into a spider web. Actually, it's a very nice analogy to keep in mind, even when you're meditating. In the mind, when you gain that kind of centeredness in the body, just imagine our nervous system like a spider web. You know, this spider ties its web to a branch here, a branch there, a rock over here, and, you know, so our nervous system of the body is tied to, you know, all over the whole perimeter of the body and everywhere in between. When something touches it, it vibrates. It's what's called vibrating awareness, and it awakens the attention. Then usually the mind rushes in to gobble up that insect with attachment or aversion. But instead, with the practice of mindfulness, our mind is like the spider. But we're sitting it out on the web, let's say, at the edge of the web, and just listening for any vibrations, but resisting the urge to rush in and gobble them up. And we're just listening to the different vibrations of a sound vibration, or the different myriad body sensations that are coming and going all over. Pleasant sensations, painful sensations, neutral sensations. And feeling that whole aliveness, that whole vibration of what I call the web. That's what I call present moment awareness. That's centered in the body, because that's the only thing that we have. And again, it's always there. Literally just beneath your nose. You don't have to look far for it. But we just never been taught, hey, look at that. No one's ever taught us that. And when you start to do it, you realize it's one of the most naturalist things there is, because it's that's where we were born from. And from the sensations, from all the different sensations you're feeling, that's what triggers off your mental states. Let's say your desires and urges. So the centeredness in the body leads to being able to feel all the various sensations that are coming through the senses and vibrating the nervous system. And as I mentioned, some of them are painful sensations, like especially some body sensations, some painful. But there are also some pleasant ones too. So subtle feeling of the blood pulsing in your fingers, or other parts of the body, or some warm little rush of energy. It feels nice. And there are a lot of pleasant sensations in the body too. But most people just focus on the painful ones. That's why people take drugs. They want to experience the pleasant sensations. But the body itself produces all those drugs. Dopamine, that's produced in our mind. That's a pleasant sensation produced in the mind. And we don't need a drug to produce that, because it's being produced naturally if we don't interfere with the workings of the body. So when you develop that concentration and feel those subtle sensations, basically that's why it's a very blissful, peaceful, and a blissful type of feeling. And the mind is happy to feel that. And that's why you can get concentrated. Concentration comes from that pleasurable feeling and the happiness of the mind that's content with the present moment. And so it becomes concentrated. That means it's become totally satisfied with the present moment and doesn't want to do anything else or create anything else, because the whole universe is basically coming through the awareness at any time, and that is a very deep level of mindfulness and the beginning of wisdom. But anyway, I know it may sound a little bit complicated, but and then based on those sensations, they trigger off the mind to want to think or react. So a painful sensation triggers off an urge to want to scratch, for example. Or maybe a pain in your knee is arising. And so you see that urge to want to move it. But then you should ask, why do I want to move that? What's wrong with that painful sensation? I don't like it. So it traces back to the sense of the I doesn't like this pleasant sensation. And then, why doesn't the I like the pleasant sensation? Well, you could come up with all kinds of answers in the mind. But it's because it's disturbing the pleasurable feeling. But anyway, if you relax around those painful feelings and not to give in to it, those feelings usually will last maybe some seconds, maybe a little longer, but feel something else. So if you feel a pain in the knee, feel some pleasant sensation somewhere else that'll take your attention away from the pain in the knee. There's no point in just observing pain all the time, because some of it's not going to go away. And so, select other sensations that are less painful. But if you don't know how to do that, you won't be able to do it when the crunch time comes. That's why when you make it a habit in general meditation to be aware of all the different parts of the body and the types of sensation, you don't have to allow your mind to get stuck on particular painful ones. And you can expand the awareness back out and be aware of the other sensation. This one still may be there, but it takes the sting out of it. Because you only have so much energy. And if all your mental energy is sucked into one particular sensation, then it will be overwhelmed, like a magnifying glass. But when you diffuse the awareness out into other ones, no particular one gets a dominance. And so they're kind of neutralized in terms of the effect that it's having on your mind. And so you're able to tolerate them, and they're going to change anyway. And you'll just allow them to change, and you don't have to waste your energy getting rid of them, because if you have patience and and tolerate them, relax around them, incorporate them into the larger body, then they'll get diffused, and you'll be surprised at how long you can tolerate a pain and having almost forgot about it for some time, until those go away. But anyway, it's the pains or the pleasurable sensations, and we can see how greed and hatred arises, our thoughts. And it's not only body sensations, but we start with the body sensations because they're most predominant. But while you're doing that with the breathing body, you're also going to be hearing sounds coming and going. And in concentration practice, sounds are normally considered to be a thorn and a distraction. So people are always trying to find the perfect place, perfect quietness. And when any sound is seen as the enemy, right? And getting angry with the person mowing their lawn next door, or the people talking in the other room, or so on, because we have this idea that they're disturbing me and I want to concentrate. All that is just a mental scenario created in your mind. But anyway, when you have this larger awareness of the breathing body, then even sounds are just coming and going. And they're sound vibrations. And they trigger off body sensations too. Like, let's say a door slams, you can almost feel a shockwave go through the body, muscle spasms like that, or even maybe not something that dramatic, but just some other little thing you can feel that these waves are going through this body and nervous system. So you're just watching this occurring. It's occurring in the present moment, but not, judging it or condemning it or grasping it or trying to push it away or change it. It is what it is. And so you can see the urge of the thoughts arise, but because you're already in a good state of concentrated awareness, just noticing those thoughts, or you can contemplate the thought, do I really need to scratch that itch now? Let me do it. Gives you a cutting couple of seconds to apply the right understanding to it and to resist the urge to scratch or to move. Because every time you scratch or move, or you increase the idea of I don't like it, and it will happen again and the next time over and over again. So the way we break our habits is by mindfully seeing the urge to want to repeat something, not only a physical sensation, but even a thought, and to resist that urge to repeat it if it's not necessary, and then the thought will just drop out of the mind and won't take you out in so many different directions, and always coming back to just becoming centered and grounded in the flow of the present moment. And so that's basically how we use meditation, going through those different stages of the four foundations of mindfulness, being centered and grounded in the body, and also understanding that this body is just a product of nature, a product of karma, and so on. It has its own lifespan and other things. It's not, we don't own it necessarily. And even though I've been meditating for 50 years, I still, got a cough, got sick this week, but now it's getting over with. It's permanent. So, but it's just a body, it's just a home for this mind. So to be able to accept those things without getting overly disturbed. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of review that general outline of the meditation practice, because it's very important in our understanding and in our ability to see what the whole process entails and to work with it to help to improve our meditation, our concentration and mindfulness and wisdom. So mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom, these are the phases that in the development of the mental qualities in the practice of the foundations of mindfulness. And in understanding and that's how we develop an understanding about the Four Noble Truths and the Dhamma. So having said that much, I want to open it up to any questions that any of you might have about anything I might have said or some other related aspects of our Dhamma practice. Yes.
When we are called to be mindful, I remember and recall that there's times where we're supposed to guard our sense doors and restrain our senses as well. What is the difference between guarding, restraining sense, and keeping mindful awareness?
They're all very much related. Mindful awareness is itself the guarding and restraining. It's when we're not mindful of what is happening to us that's when we're not guarding our senses. Because being mindful means understanding, okay, hearing, sound has entered the ear. And you're guarding the rush to react to it. So by paying attention and understanding, just hearing, it's just a sound vibration, you're sort of guarding the ear. That means not getting it into trouble by reacting to it, by immediately sticking your finger in it and breaking your eardrum or something else, or reaching up to scratch something with a long fingernail and drawing blood and then saying, So we do a lot of things. We don't guard our body because of our unmindful, overreactive things that we do. Reach out unmindfully and knock a glass of ink all over your book, your thesis or something, or anything else, and then have to clean up the mess afterward. So we're guarding the senses, means guarding the reactions that we take based on those, and the restraining the reactions that come from leaving your ear door unguarded. That's why they call the six sense doors. The eye door, ear door, nose door, tongue door, body door, and the mind door itself. Because even when a thought arises, like a memory of somebody who wronged you, and you're guarding the mind door, a negative thought of anger is arising in the mind door. That's what the mindfulness is. The mindfulness is that watchdog that I mentioned. It's something is occurring through this sense door. That's what mindfulness is. And or at least one aspect of the mindfulness, the clear comprehension. And then restraining the reaction, being able to just observe that the sound or sensation, let it well up, and see how it changes, and applying whatever wisdom you have toward it. Okay, this is impermanent. It's caused because of contact. Just relax. May not that be important. Okay, it's just an angry thought. But you can either just see it, okay, the thought of anger is, and let go of it. But a lot of people can't do that, can they? They get carried, they grasp that thought. Yes, that person wronged me. I have a right to get angry. I got a right to plot revenge. They did it so many times. I'm going to get even. I'm doing it for others. All kind of excuses will come into your mind to justify why you should, take some unskillful action. But you just watch all that. You don't give in to all those ego-animated reactions, and they just peter out. If you don't feed it with your own justifications, I have the right to do that, then it gets worse and worse. So that's the meaning of those things. Guarding the sense doors is, know what's coming through any sense door at any time. Maybe you're sitting there meditating and somebody lets some bad air out the backside and it wafts by, and okay. And you could just be, okay, smelling, unpleasant sensation, but not to, who did that? And starting to, create lots of other thoughts. So you're guarding the sense doors and the mind. Yeah. And this process is going on hundreds of times, all the time in the practice, from gross levels to even very subtle ones too. But normally we don't see them because our mind is distracted, or it's half asleep, or it's lost in thoughts. So that's why we hardly ever see this process with a clear mind. That's why you have to reach that first stage of being grounded and centered in the body and having weakened many of the gross hindrances so that the mind can stay a longer period of time just feeling that vibration of the present moment and sensations coming and going, learning how to observe the unpleasant, the itches and scratches or aches or pains, endure them, relax around them, so they're no longer really sucking any of your mental energy away. And then that's what develops concentration. When we're not dissipating our consciousness through thoughts or bodily movements, then that's what strengthens actually the concentration. Yes.
Bhante, I haven't personally heard you speak much about the Brahma Viharas, much about goodwill and compassion and so on. And not that you haven't, just that I haven't heard you speak on it yet. And I was wondering if you could kind of touch on, I know it's a big subject, kind of touch on their place in the practice, and sort of more specifically whether there's something that one sort of actively develops and cultivates, or if they're just sort of a natural consequence of, you know, the hindrances weakening and so on and so forth. But mostly the role in the practice, in your opinion.
Well, not in my opinion, but from what the Buddha's instruction in dealing with the things is that the metta is an antidote for anger and ill will, usually directed at others because of our attachments, and some person has threatened our peace of mind, or they threatened any attachment we might have, threatened our self-image, and so we take offense, and then we have anger toward that person because they insulted us, or they insulted a friend of ours, or something that we have attachment to. So first of all, you have to understand what is the basis of anger and ill will. It's something that's threatening the basis of our attachment. When it's our self-image, we might think of ourselves as also nice and smart and this and that, and somebody calls us some stupid idiot or something. So, not very deflating. And so we take offense. Because we're attaching to ourself, you know. Instead of somebody calls you a name, say, well, this body's not myself. You know, he calls this body a name, so what? You know, don't get offended by it. And that's, so if you can't let go of the anger, resentment, then metta is an antidote. And so, you know, metta is actually a practice that comes naturally through the development of insight, but it can also be done to combat ill will. So instead of, you know, the person that insulted you or irritated you, you can think, well, this person did that because they themselves are sick, and they all have their own problems, and so they did this or that to me out of their own conditioning, and so on, and, you know, to regard them like a patient in a hospital. People don't voluntarily want to go to hospitals, do they? It's because they go there because they're sick. And so normally you don't get angry at people in the hospitals. You have compassion for them. So, and knowing that you also have acted that way in the past towards others, and so it allows you to have a little bit more friendliness, cultivate a more gentle attitude, or at least not to, you know, this idea that you should love everybody, metta is love, that's overhyped. You know, and Bhante Ji, you know, gives a definition of not love, unbounded love, but friendliness. It comes from that word of having a friendly attitude. So you don't have to like the person even, just don't have ill will toward the person. You treat them like a patient. You don't have to go in the hospital and like everybody in the hospital, do you? But you can go to the hospital and have compassion for their suffering because you yourself have been there, and so on. So at least to have a friendly attitude, at least. You don't have to go over and bend over backwards to be overly friendly to people. It's just not to have ill will towards them, because that is, if you let the ill will generate, then at some point you may act upon the ill will. But the thought comes first, and if you don't check the thought, then it can turn into ill will, like using bad speech to a person, some other, flipping them the finger or whatever. So, but without the mindfulness, we won't be able to do that. So anyway, the metta is the easiest thing to develop. And if you don't have friendliness to others, you're not going to be compassionate toward them. So compassion is a higher form of mental training than friendliness. Because if you're not friendly and have anger toward people, you're not going to be very compassionate. So develop metta first. That helps us soften the hard edges of the mind and the me mind kind of thing. And then the compassion when you see somebody suffering. From your own experience, if you have the means, you try to help them, whether it's through physical means, like helping an old person cross the street or carry their heavy load, or providing time for people and so on. But anyway, just trying to comfort them in one way or another. And then the mudita is harder to practice than compassion, because sympathetic joy, having being happy when others gain something at your expense, to be happy about that, usually people don't do that. So if you've been buying lottery tickets for months and months and spending loads of money, and you found out some person just went in the first lottery ticket they ever got, some stranger off the street, maybe from another state, and they hit the jackpot, you're probably not going to be very happy about it, right? Or if you're vying for a job, and 10 people, submitted applications for a job, and somebody else got it over you, what do you think? You deserved it more or whatever. You're also not going to be that happy about the other person. It's all centered around the ego. So to actually be happy, even at your expense, that touches the ego more deeply, actually. And that's why it's a deeper practice. But if you can't be compassionate, first of all, if you don't have the friendliness, and then you don't have the compassion, then it's not likely you're going to be able to have the mudita, especially when it comes in terms of somebody's happiness at your expense, and so on. And then upekkha is a result of all of the above. You don't practice upekkha. Upekkha is the result, is the resulting tranquilized nervous system from having practiced meditation, developed concentration, mindfulness, guarding the sense doors, all of that, as well as the other Brahma Viharas. It's that end result of having sort of tranquilized the nervous system, that you're no longer reacting so easily toward various things. You develop upekkha. That is not even choosing between this or that necessarily. Doesn't mean you don't have still the ability to choose one thing or another, but it's like just having that equanimity of enduring pain, for example. When you're just starting meditation, just saying pain, that's not going to probably help very much. Or maybe it will for a couple minutes, but it'll build up to a point where you're going to move and so on. But once you develop a deeper level of concentration and mindfulness and other types of things, then when those stronger painful sensations, the mind will just be tuned in to the subtler vibrations of present moment awareness, and not get reacted to even the pains or loud noises or anything that may be going. You don't have to try to do it. The mind is already in that state of equanimity. So that's the way that I like to sort of describe those things.
Bhante, regarding the meditation, mindfulness and be aware of the physical body, I am aware of that, and the practice have helped me to endure pain and all of that. But what about dealing with thoughts that come from nowhere, that they are incoherent, that they don't make sense? So, when you are in meditation and it's just craziness there, that sometimes, how do you deal with that? How can you
Well, you haven't developed enough concentration, that means body-centered awareness, to just let them fly over the top of the head and not to penetrate down into your heart, or to the equilibrium. So you just haven't developed enough concentration yet. So you're identifying, all these crazy thoughts in my mind. Just let them be like, let's say there are some flies buzzing around your head. Okay? They're just flies, or the fan swirling around, some fan noise. It's just white noise. So we just have to regard our own thoughts, even nonsensical thoughts, even sometimes negative thoughts. Don't let them lodge in the body. As long as they're just thoughts kind of floating around, if you don't invest them with energy, they'll disappear. And so it's basically just because you haven't developed enough concentration and awareness to that you're allowing these butterflies of disconnected, weird thoughts coming and going. They don't mean anything. Don't give them any meaning.
Did the Buddha describe at any point him going through something like that?
Yeah, on the night of his enlightenment, Mara kept on, barraging him with all kind of, he had visions of all these, voluptuous dancing girls trying to allure him. Oh, you handsome ascetic, why are you sitting under the tree? Come with me, enjoy. He kept on getting barraged with all. These were visions, of course, from the unconscious mind, or of thunderstorms arising in the mind, trying to scare him off of his meditation seat to give up his goal. You see, so. That is, it's the same thing. Any kind of thoughts that are trying to take us away from remaining in our center and being able to let go of the sense of I and me, anything that threatens that, then that's what we have to be aware of. That is just Mara. The Buddha always used the phrase, Mara, I see you, get out. He wasn't going to be, taken with Mara's delusions. So anything that happens to you in meditation, you meditated for so long now, why don't you take a rest, Mara, get out of here. I'm sorry. Any last question? Okay, so we'll then go ahead and try to gradually calm down. And just as it's still hopefully fresh in the mind, we're going to stand up in about a minute, but before that, just as a training, just to just take a deep, slow breath, let all that outward focus, close the eyes, to see how quickly you can come back to feel your buttocks and feet pressing the floor, your hands. Just take a long, deep, slow breath, feel the gradual expansion of the abdomen, rib cage, and chest. And hold the air in the lungs for as long as you comfortably can to feel the present moment vibrations. On the long out breath, feel the relaxing contractions of the long out breath, riding the out breath down to the end. Feel the last bit of air go out. Just do this once or twice more. Just breathing in, letting go of the past and the future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Okay, now, and slowly stand up.